and welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Raisha Sehgal. On the show today, there is a new war on the horizon, and no, this is not being fought with missiles or soldiers. It is US President Donald Trump's tariff policies which has ignited trade wars on multiple fronts. The question being, how hard will America's new enemies punch back? Also on Gravitas, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he has received only $75 billion out of $177 billion in military aid from the US. He goes on to say that he's unaware of where those funds went. We'll get you the complete story on the show today. Here's a look at what else is lined up for you on Gravitas today. As Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu heads for Washington, he is scheduled to hold talks with US President Donald Trump. And it comes amid a 6-week ceasefire and the IDF's operations in West Bank. The question being, what will a Trump-Netanyahu meeting have in store for not just Gaza, but also West Bank? Finally on Gravitas, a new research reveals that plastic pollution could be the silent cause for premature births. Our top focus on Gravitas, one of the countries that is deeply dependent on American aid. We're talking about Ukraine. It cannot account for roughly $200 billion in US aid. You heard that right. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reportedly said that he has no idea where most of the $200 billion in American aid went. Zelensky has reportedly said Washington has provided Kiev with just over $75 billion in military and other aid. He added that he has no idea where US President Donald Trump's estimate of $200 billion came from, or where it might have disappeared to. So the question being, where did the money go? It's a real mystery perhaps. Since the war started in 2022, the US Congress has authorized roughly $175 billion for Ukraine. Yet, Zelensky insists that he has seen little of that cash. So what happened to the money? What explains this disparity? Is America lying? Or is Zelensky hiding something? Perhaps the deeply entrenched corruption in his country. Well, Trump, who has been highly critical of Biden's magnanimity towards Ukraine, has argued that NATO and EU, and I'm quoting here, equalize their contributions with US's support. Last month, Trump had said, and I quote, "We are in there for $200 billion more than the EU. I mean, what are we? Stupid." US Vice President J.D. Vance also mentioned the figure as early as last July, saying, and I quote, "We have now spent $200 billion. What is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish?" Well, according to several media reports, Zelensky has said that Ukraine never received even half of that sum. He reportedly said that Ukraine received about $76 billion in aid, but not $200 billion. But since 2022, the US Congress has reportedly authorized roughly $175 billion for Ukraine. A major portion of that funding has reportedly gone to American industries and various US government activities related to the war in Ukraine. Well, according to Germany's Karl Institute, the US had allocated approximately $92 billion in financial and military aid to Ukraine, while EU countries and the UK had allocated $131 billion. This is the data till October 2024. If what Zelensky is saying is true, it only adds fuel to the firestorm of corruption in Ukraine. Just last month, in an interview with US podcaster Lex Fridman, Zelensky said that Ukraine has not received even half of the $177 billion that was allocated by the US. He has rather implied that this situation may be linked to corruption or lobbying by American companies. While admitting to the problem of corruption, Zelensky noted that Kyiv is working hard to combat it through what he described as the most complex anti-corruption system in Europe. However, clearly, it is not enough. Corruption remains the top domestic issue for Ukrainians, and it is the most acute problem among all European countries. In fact, according to the annual ranking of corruption by Transparency International, Ukraine has scored poorly for decades, and there are various reasons for it, including slow post-Soviet changes in Ukraine's economy, frequent shifts in ruling groups, and also a deeply entrenched habit of seeking easy solutions to everyday issues. This high level of corruption is among the reasons why EU and NATO have not yet accepted Ukraine's NATO membership. For Western governments, the fight against corruption has been stated as a top priority. And so, since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, scandals related to the military have surfaced, including price gouging on food supplies for the armed forces, overpriced winter gear, and an unfulfilled contract for mortar shells. These are serious crimes, especially as they affect the lives of those fighting for their country. Well, the war has only complicated the issue further, worsening the situation. This brings us back to the current situation. The lack of clarity on the missing US aid and where the $200 billion have gone is rather shocking, given the gravity of the situation and the unchecked corruption. The question being, can Kyiv's allies truly ever trust Ukraine? All right, moving on. US President Donald Trump's aggressive tariff policies have ignited trade wars on multiple fronts, with Canada, Mexico, and China all part of the mix. And this conflict is not being fought with missiles or soldiers, but with tariffs and retaliatory measures that could perhaps ripple global trade. The question now is, how hard will America's new enemies punch back? Have the friends turned frenemies? And will brinkmanship cost Trump? Let's break this down for you in the next few minutes. Well, Trump's decision to slap a 25% tariff on nearly all Canadian imports has triggered a fierce backlash from Ottawa. In the latest, Canada's Ontario banned US firms from government contracts in a move that will reportedly scrap $100 million deal with Elon Musk's Starlink. Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, said that the ban would persist unless the Trump administration lifts tariffs on Canada. And Canada is not just voicing its discontent. It is reportedly taking legal action as well, accusing the US of violating global trade agreements. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is striking Trump back with equal force, imposing a tit-for-tat 25% tariffs on $155 billion Canadian dollars, or approximately $107 billion worth of American goods. Yes, the amount is $107 billion. And these are not just symbolic gestures. Canada's retaliatory tariffs target over 1,200 American goods, spanning from household appliances to cosmetics and even everyday goods such as orange juice, peanut butter, wine, beer, coffee and footwear. And the tariffs, the imposition of tariffs starts tomorrow. These countermeasures take effect reportedly directly hitting about 17% of all US exports to Canada. But Canada is not stopping just there. According to an official statement by the Canadian government, a second wave of tariff is already in the works, set to be unveiled in just 3 weeks. This new list will hit American cars, trucks, electric vehicles, steel, fruits, vegetables, and even aerospace goods. Collectively, all these goods represent 125 billion Canadian dollars, or at least 85 billion Canadian dollars. According to Reuters, a senior Canadian government official labeled Trump's tariffs as, and I'm quoting here, illegal and a blatant breach of both the Free Trade Agreement and World Trade Organization rules, adding that Canada plans to challenge these tariffs through every available legal channel. And if new legal avenues emerge, they are ready to explore those too. Meanwhile, at a press conference, Trudeau warned that these US tariffs will not just hurt Canada, they will in fact backfire, causing real economic pain for American families. Trump said he had spoken to Trudeau on Monday about the tariffs, adding that they would talk again later in the day, adding that he is also set to hold talks with Mexico to discuss this very issue. But Canada is not fighting this battle alone. To its south, Mexico is in a similar predicament. Like Canada, US has also imposed a blanket 25% tariff on all Mexican imports. And Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum too has slapped retaliatory tariffs on American goods. She called out the Trump administration, warning that these tariffs will hit Americans where it hurts the most, and that is their wallets.
This measure of 25% tariffs has effects for both countries, but it has very serious effects for the economy of the United States, as it is going to greatly increase the costs of all products that are exported from Mexico to the United States. It's going to have 25% more cost.
But while she emphasized Mexico's preference for dialogue over confrontation, her message was clear that Mexico has the resolve and the courage to stand its ground.
I told him, Mr. President, instead of fighting with tariffs, let's dialogue. This is how people understand each other. We have to communicate, but not in this way. This is the way in which we have responded, and it is very important.
Well, across the Pacific, China is also gearing up for trade battle. Beijing has announced plans to challenge 10% US tariffs on goods from China through the World Trade Organization. As per reports, China's Ministry of Commerce accused the United States of violating WTO rules, urging Washington to abandon its confrontational stance and warning that escalating these trade tensions will have no winners, only losers on both the sides. And China is not just filing legal complaints. They have reportedly said that they will, and I'm quoting here, take required countermeasures against the US, perhaps signaling that more economic retaliation is on the horizon. So what are the economic consequences of this global trade war? Experts warn that these tariffs could trigger significant economic disruptions in the US. Inflation, a persistent concern for American voters, could surge. Well, according to predictions from Yale University, the average US household could lose more than $1,100 annually, and that is due to these new import taxes. That translates to higher prices for groceries, gasoline, housing, and automobiles. Everyday Americans will feel the pinch in their wallets, from the gas pump to the grocery aisle. But the Trump administration is not blind to the risks. In fact, the decision to impose a lower tariff that's 10% instead of 25% on Canadian energy imports was reportedly a strategic move, And that is to avoid skyrocketing fuel and utility costs that could cripple American households and businesses alike. And yet, despite multiple reports that these tariffs may hurt American consumers as much as, if not more, than Canada, Mexico and China, Trump remains firm on his stance. In a post on his Truth Social platform, he said, and I'm quoting here, "This will be the golden age of America. Will there be some pain? Yes, maybe and maybe not. We will make America great again, and it will be worth the price that must be paid." So where does this leave the US? Well, Trump's tariff war has created new enemies in Canada, Mexico and China. And these are not minor players. They are America's largest trading partners, countries whose economic ties with the US run deep. Combined, Mexico, China and Canada account for more than a third of the goods brought into the United States, accounting for more than $1 trillion in goods a year. The question is not just how hard these countries will punch US back, it's rather how long America can withstand the blows. The question remains that if Trump will blink. The battle lines are drawn. Well, on to some breaking news that we're getting at this point of time. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has said that US has now agreed to pause tariffs for 1 month. She's addressing a press conference right now as we speak. The Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says she asked for US to help stem traffic of guns coming from US. Trump was in agreement. Mexican President Sheinbaum says that Trump insisted on addressing trade deficit with Mexico, but she pushed back on that. Well, Trump says that he is looking forward to participating in negotiations with President Sheinbaum as to achieve a deal between the two countries. And well, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Thenani is joining us on the phone line from New York. Hi, Susan. After a tit-for-tat trade war, the Mexican president has said that US has agreed to pause tariffs for 1 month. Get us the latest on this.
We haven't heard from President Trump or his team yet, but yes, Mexican President Sheinbaum did say the 25% tariffs announced by President Trump are all hold for 30 days. They held a, quote, good conversation, according to her, and she agreed to send 10,000 troops to the U.S. border to combat drug trafficking. Remember, fentanyl was a huge problem for the United States and the Trump administration, and security of the border and that drug entering the United States, according to the Trump team, caused these tariff wars to begin, although they haven't really begun yet. In a message on X, Sheinbaum said that teams from both countries will begin working on 2 fronts, security and trade. She also said that the U.S. is committed to working to prevent the trafficking of high-powered weapons to Mexico. But as you know, U.S. stock markets, which had opened the day sharply lower, now we're seeing that it's starting to recover just after that announcement was made on the tariff pause, just showing how everything is so interrelated. Nonetheless, we're still waiting for President Trump and his team to respond to these comments by the Mexican president.
Right, Susan. Trump has also said that he's perhaps looking forward to participating in negotiations with the Mexican president in a bid to reach a deal between the two countries. What is the possibility of that?
Yeah, there is a very high possibility, considering the fact that, first of all, those tariffs haven't gone into effect. They're going to go into effect midnight tonight, which would be Tuesday morning, if no negotiations or no agreement is reached. Now, this 30-day pause may be a start, but ultimately it appears that Donald Trump and his administration are looking for a negotiated settlement. They weren't looking forward to these tariffs either. They were using it as a negotiating tactic. Now, how far it'll go, that's what yet to be seen. But I think the 3 countries all want to reach a settlement before these tariffs go into effect.
Right, Susan, thanks very much for joining us on Gravitas with your insights.
And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China.
Our next story is about China's secret project in Panama, which has frightened the United States. You must have seen the headlines. Well, US President Donald Trump threatened to take control of the Panama Canal, repeatedly accusing China of having control over it. And now, Panama, acting under pressure, has pledged to terminate a key deal with China. However, beyond the headlines, here's the question that has caught our attention today. What is China doing in Panama? Why has the US president singled out China in his complaints about Panama? Let's understand, but first, here's the latest. On the 2nd of February, after meeting with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Panama's President Jose Raul Mulino declared that he would not renew a 2017 MOU with China to participate in the country's Belt and Road Initiative, also known as BRI. During the meeting, Mulino said that Panama's sovereignty would remain unchanged. He also indicated that the country would focus on strengthening ties with the US and increasing US investments in Panama. So, what is the scale of China-linked operations along the Panama Canal? And who actually controls the canal altogether? Well, here's a little history to it now. The 82-kilometer canal, which connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, was constructed and owned by the US in the early 1900s. It was ultimately handed over to Panama in 1977 under a treaty that guaranteed its neutrality. The US is the biggest user of the canal, accounting for about 3/4 of the cargo that passes through it each year. What about China now? It ranks as a distant second. Still, it has its influence here. There is a port at both the ends of this waterway. Both ports are operated by a Hong Kong-based company, and this is what Trump meant when he said China is based at both ends of the Panama Canal. While Trump's remark raised eyebrows, its roots lie in a concession awarded to a Hong Kong company, previously called Hutchison Whampoa. It was given back in 1996. And this deal granted operational rights over Balboa and the Cristobal ports to a company that ultimately became Panama Ports Company, a subsidiary of C.K. Hutchison Holdings owned by billionaire Li Ka-shing. Although the contract allowed the company to manage the ports, it did not grant them ownership. In fact, just last year, Panama extended this concession for another 25 years to the Hong Kong-based company. In 1999, the US State Department reassured the public that they found no evidence to suggest that China would gain control over canal operations. And fast forward to today, and there's still obviously a palpable tension. On Wednesday, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said, and I'm quoting here, China does not participate in the management and operation of the canal and has never interfered in the affairs of the canal. However, concerns linger. Some US officials and experts express skepticism about a Chinese company's substantial presence in such a strategically important region. After all, in recent years, China has been forcing nations, including Panama, to forego their ties with Taiwan in favor of diplomatic ties with Beijing. It is this move of China that has raised alarms in the US. Marco Rubio, Trump's Secretary of State and a noted China critic, has questioned whether such companies could act at China's behest. He has questioned whether these companies could potentially disrupt transit through the canal. Experts say that Beijing could exert pressure or even nationalize Hutchison's operations if it sees fit, particularly during a crisis. But that's not all. In 2017, China scored a major victory in Panama. Panama cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan, the self-governing island that China claims as its own. Panama had been one of the few countries worldwide that recognized Taiwan as a sovereign state. Then, the following year, Panama became the first Latin American country to sign on to the BRI. which, remember, is Xi Jinping's flagship global infrastructure program, otherwise known as China's tool of economic imperialism. Next, a flurry of promises followed. China proposed to build a 250-mile high-speed rail line from Panama City towards the western border with Costa Rica. Beijing also offered to build a new subway line in Panama City. In fact, a slew of Chinese companies even began working on a container port. And that was promised to be Panama's most modern one. Beijing was clear. It wanted to strengthen its support in Panama City. In 2018, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Panama for the first state visit by a Chinese leader. It did not stop there. Beijing also stepped up its soft power efforts. A Confucius Institute was opened in Panama to promote Chinese culture and language. And that's when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. China donated healthcare supplies, but as China's influence grew over Panama, so did the pressure from the US for Panama to distance itself from Beijing. Could all these moves by China then be the real motivation behind Trump's new threats? It could. What does Panama say about all this? The president of Panama, Jose Raul Molino, has denied that there is any foreign influence of the two ports in question. He says, and I quote, "The canal is and will remain Panama's, but if the events are any indication, it's become clear that the Panama Canal is not just a passage for ships. It has become a battleground of influence." And the question being, how will all this play out in the coming months? We'll have to wait and watch. Well, shifting our focus to West Asia now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will soon meet US President Donald Trump in Washington, D.C., and that's on the 4th of February. This, by the way, is Netanyahu's first foreign visit after facing an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court, or the ICC, on November 21st, 2024. The meeting between the two leaders is crucial as it is set to take place amid a 6-week ceasefire that has brought a temporary pause to 15 months of fighting in Gaza, and that's between Israel and Hamas. But Israeli forces, they continue its operations in the West Bank. What will the Trump-Netanyahu meeting have in store for the future of West Bank and Gaza? Our next report telling you more.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is in Washington. He will be meeting US President Trump. Netanyahu is the first foreign leader visiting the US since Trump's inauguration last month. Meanwhile, this is what is happening in the West Bank. The IDF claims that 35 gunmen were killed during operations in Jenin, Tulkarem and the Tamun area, while 15 others were killed in drone strikes. The Israeli military blew up several buildings in a series of simultaneous explosions. The Palestinian state news agency says Israeli strikes have leveled around 20 buildings in the Jenin refugee camp. The horror doesn't end there. The IDF admitted that it had also mistakenly targeted civilians, including a toddler. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, at least 70 people have been killed in the West Bank just in 2025. Just for context, the occupied West Bank has seen a surge in violence since the start of Israel's war on Gaza in October 2023, with Israel launching near-daily military arrest raids. And despite the ceasefire being in place, the violence against the Palestinians in Gaza continues to surge. A move that will have far-reaching implications as far as the peace deal with Hamas is concerned, something which is also slated to be a part of discussions between Trump and Netanyahu during their meetings.
Netanyahu's visit to Trump is anticipated to reflect his future plans to forcibly displace the Palestinian people and redraw the Middle East. I sincerely hope this plan does not succeed.
In a statement released ahead of his departure, Netanyahu said that his discussions with Trump would border on a range of issues, including the release of all the hostages as well as contention with Iran. Netanyahu also said the meeting is a testimony to the strength of the Israeli-American alliance.
The The decisions we made in the war have already changed the face of the Middle East. Our decisions and the courage of our soldiers have redrawn the map. But I believe that working closely with President Trump, we can redraw it even further and for the better.
The Israeli premier's visit comes as the US continues to put pressure on Israel and Hamas to continue with the ceasefire that had paused a devastating 15-month war in Gaza. Especially as Trump has made it crystal clear that he wants an end to the wars in West Asia that has also recently spread to Lebanon. As for Netanyahu, this is also a golden chance to strengthen ties with Washington after facing tensions with the previous Biden administration. However, here's the catch. Netanyahu's peace promises might be looking to strengthen the case for a more permanent end to Israel's war on Gaza. The recent attacks in the West Bank paint another picture altogether. And especially now with the Hamas threatening not to free hostages in the second phase unless the Israeli forces withdraw fully and the war comes to a complete end. The recent attacks seem to be pushing the prospect of peace in the conflict-torn areas even further away. And now, after his meeting with Trump, will Netanyahu change his stance for good and rechart his West Asia policy? We'll have to wait and see.
Staying on to stories from West Asia about multiple countries in West Asia, in fact, who are shifting alliances, conducting high-stakes meetings and power recalibrations that could reshape the region's future. Firstly, Syria's newly appointed president, Ahmed al-Shara, has made his first official trip abroad, choosing Saudi Arabia as his destination. His meeting with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman reportedly marks a pivotal moment, symbolizing Syria's intent to pivot towards new alliances. As per reports, al-Shara praised Saudi Arabia's, and I'm quoting here, genuine commitment to supporting Syria's reconstruction and future stability. The discussions reportedly focused on cooperation in energy, technology, education and healthcare. But the question being, why Riyadh first? Well, according to reports, al-Shara aimed to signal the importance his government places on Saudi Arabia's role in the new Syrian era. Perhaps a strategic message to the region and beyond, that Syria is looking for new partnerships, for new ties. Remember, al-Shara is not just any leader. He spearheaded the Syrian opposition's successful effort to topple the long-standing regime of Bashar al-Assad last December, following a rapid and decisive campaign across the country. Since assuming power, his administration has been trying to gain legitimacy both regionally and also on the global stage. A key part of that effort, pushing for the removal of crippling Western sanctions on Syria that have suffocated Syria's economy for years. And Saudi Arabia reportedly seems to be an important ally in this quest. Just last week, Saudi Foreign Minister visited Damascus, reportedly signaling Riyadh's readiness to engage actively with European nations and the United States to advocate for lifting these sanctions on Syria. Now, al-Shara's Saudi visit reportedly appears designed to reinforce that very commitment and secure concrete support. But this trip is not just about economic recovery. It also marks a major shift in Syria's geopolitical alignment. Damascus seems to be no longer leaning heavily on Iran and Russia, which are both staunch allies of former President Bashar al-Assad. Syria is signaling a pivot towards new regional partnerships, towards new regional ties. And that's not just a shift in policy, it's a realignment. Meanwhile, diplomatic ripples are spreading beyond Syria. Qatar's Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Ahmed Al Thani, made a historic visit to Damascus last Thursday, becoming the first Arab leader to do so since Assad's ouster, a sign that Arab nations are recalibrating their ties with Syria's new leadership, perhaps even competing to influence its future trajectory. In yet another diplomatic maneuver, Jordan's King Abdullah II has accepted an invitation to meet US President Donald Trump at the White House later this month. And this will be the first face-to-face meeting since Trump's return to office, and the stakes could not be higher. Trump has proposed a plan about resettling Palestinians from Gaza, floating the idea that Egypt and Jordan could absorb displaced populations from Gaza. Well, both the countries have rejected this proposal, standing very firm despite Washington's pressure. Trump, however, remains undeterred. Just last week, he openly stated that he's pressed King Abdullah II to take in Gazans. Jordan's stance has been clear as well. In Brussels, King Abdullah reaffirmed his country's support for the two-state solution, emphasizing that Palestinians must have the right to their own land, a sentiment resonating across the region. Top diplomats from Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, Saudi Arabia and Qatar met in Cairo, issuing a unified rejection of any forced displacement of Gazans. As per reports, the joint stance sends a strong message that Arab nations may differ on many issues, but on Palestine, they draw a red line. Meanwhile, in yet another development on the diplomatic front, according to Russian media, a Hamas delegation led by senior Politburo member Mosa Abu Marzouk is heading to Moscow for high-level talks with the Russian Foreign Ministry. Well, Russia maintains channels with all key players in West Asia, such as Israel, Iran, Lebanon, the Palestinian Authority, and even Hamas. This positions Moscow as a unique power broker capable of influencing outcomes where others hit diplomatic dead ends. So what do we make of all of this? What we are witnessing is not just a series of isolated meetings. It could be a comprehensive reordering of West Asia's political landscape. Old alliances are fading, new partnerships are emerging, and countries in West Asia are recalculating their interests, not with borders, but this time with diplomacy. On to Pakistan now, which seems to be facing attacks from multiple fronts. The reason why we are saying this is because, as per a think tank, Pakistan witnessed a sharp increase in terror attacks in January 2025, surging by 42% as compared to the previous month. But it's not just terrorism that plagues Pakistan's state of affairs, but a combination of factors, including Imran Khan and his party's position on the Shehbaz Sharif-led regime. Hanging by a thread, add to that, is US's temporary suspension of foreign aids to Pakistan and a churn in the Pakistan judiciary. Let's go over all of them one by one. On Monday, quoting the data released by the Pakistan Institute for Conflict and Security Studies, or the PICSS, at least 74 terror attacks were recorded nationwide, resulting in a total of 91 fatalities, including 35 security personnel, 20 civilians, and 36 militants. Meanwhile, another 117 individuals suffered injuries, including 53 security forces personnel, 54 civilians, and 10 terrorists. Not just that. The report also highlighted an intensified counter-terrorism campaign by security forces, which led to elimination of at least 185 terrorists in the month of January, thus making it the second deadliest month for militant casualties since 2016. The report further stated that Khyber Pakhtunkhwa remained the worst affected province, followed by Balochistan, where 2 suicide bombings have been reported. What explains this? One of the reasons attributed behind this is the growing ambitions of the Pakistani Taliban right on Pakistani soil. Well, I'm talking about Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan of the TTP and its dreams to follow the Afghan Taliban's footsteps by carving out its own emirate. Meanwhile, Pakistan's political crisis shows no signs of abating as well, with Imran Khan accusing the Shehbaz Sharif-led government for current economic and political turmoil in the country. Khan also stressed that the current government is only bothered with having its grip on power, while turning a blind eye to global warnings. Late last year, the leader of the opposition and a member of Imran Khan's party, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or the PTI, had initiated negotiations on several contentious issues, including the release of imprisoned PTI leaders, as well as addressing alleged electoral fraud in last year's controversial elections. So far, 3 rounds of talks have taken place, but unfortunately with no decisive outcomes to any of them. Meanwhile, the conviction of Imran Khan when the negotiations were underway made it harder for any resolution to come out of it. If these aren't compelling enough, the temporary suspension of US aids to Pakistan for revaluation purposes signed in an executive order by Trump. And that has now spelled doom for Pakistan's economy, which is already in a dire situation. Even as the US is yet to announce exactly how much aid will be cut, experts believe that the total impact of the visible aid suspension might be over $900 million US. Not just that, this move has also stopped a number of important US-led projects in Pakistan. 5 projects related to the energy sector have also come to a halt as a result of this decision. You see, this worsens the position of Pakistan even more, which is already reeling under a bunch of internal crises. The latest flashpoint being the Pakistan judiciary. Well, what happened there? On Friday, 5 judges of the Islamabad High Court or the IHC penned a letter to the Chief Justices of the Supreme Court and High Courts urging them to take a stand against reports of a transferred judge being appointed to the IHC's top seat. This brings Pakistan's 26th Amendment of the Constitution back to the spotlight and its attempts to subjugate the judiciary to the current regime in Pakistan, which basically threatens the independence of the judiciary. Well, the moot point now is Pakistan is in the grip of multiple crises, not from one, two, but from multiple fronts. The question is, can Pakistan survive these storms? But that only time will tell. Now, we all are aware of microplastics growing risks to one's health, and now a new study has uncovered a startling link between microplastic pollution and premature births. The study done by a team of US-based doctors reveals that microplastics and nanoplastics are more likely to show up in the placentas of premature babies than those born full term. Well, this discovery means that there is a possibility that the plastic shards could be contributing to the risk and occurrence of preterm birth. The study also poses an urgent question about the role of plastic pollution in pregnancy complications. The study, which was conducted in Houston, analyzed 175 placentas, which means 100 from full-term births and 75 from preterm births. And the end result was this: an average of 203 micrograms of plastic per gram in preterm placentas, which is over 50% more found in full-term placentas. The study further highlighted that there were 12 types of plastic that were detected, the most common ones being the plastic used in bottles, PVC and polycarbonate. Well, microplastics are found in human brains as well as the bellies of fishes deep in the ocean. Now, they enter the human body through several ways, to name some. Number 1, food. Microplastics can be found in a variety of foods, especially seafood, fish and shellfish, which can ingest microplastics and they then end up in the human food chain. Number 2, drinks. Bottled water has been identified as a common source of microplastics. Research suggests that microplastics can leach into water from plastic bottles. Third being, microplastics can be present in the air, particularly in urban areas or places with a lot of plastic waste. So when we breathe, these tiny particles can enter the respiratory system. The potential health implications of microplastics is increasingly concerning. And as we continue to uncover the hidden dangers of microplastics, one thing is clear, that these tiny particles are making a massive impact, and for expectant mothers and those planning to conceive, awareness is the first step towards protection. Financial markets woke up to the reality of trade wars on Monday, with a sell-off extending across asset classes following US President Donald Trump making good on his promise to slap tariffs on imports from China, Mexico and Canada. The dollar surged to the highest since November 2022, while stock markets and other currencies tumbled. In reaction to the punitive actions implemented against some of US's most important trading partners, stock futures in Europe and the United States fell. An index of shares in the Asia-Pacific region also fell, the most in over 6 months. Yields on US Treasuries rose as a result of concerns that the move is likely to be inflationary. The sell-off spread across asset classes. Trump's announcement that taxes on EU imports will definitely happen. It also exacerbated the euro's slide. Traders are on alert for big swings in assets that are considered at the front lines of any trade war. Traders also cut their holdings in some asset tokens that had benefited from Trump's pro-crypto remarks. Bitcoin crashed below $100,000 after Trump's tariffs threatens retaliatory export taxes as well. Finally, the crypto market is learning a lesson in Trump's speak. As many had warned, despite Trump's embrace of the crypto sector, his policies often are a double-edged sword. US crude prices rose in response to the tariff decision, which has the potential to disrupt the highly integrated North American oil industry and also impose charges on imports from Mexico and Canada. The spread between US crude and Brent shrank due to the ongoing concerns about a possible interruption to US oil supplies. Experts now say financial markets are likely to undergo a painful adjustment procedure in the coming few weeks. A massive spike in seismic activity in Greek island of Santorini has raised concerns. The tremors have prompted authorities to send rescue units to the area and close schools as well. Some areas have been declared off limits as well due to rock slide risks. Now, Santorini is among Greece's top travel destinations, but the island is now seeing mass departures after more than 200 small earthquakes shook the region. Tremors were felt at one of the largest volcanic eruption sites in the island off the coast of Greece.
You could feel the tremors more last night in comparison to other days. It is shaking a little more, but from what the local authorities are saying, it is a natural phenomenon. We are worried, but we are not going to die worrying or flee the island.
Well, in the last 2 days, at least 200 minor earthquakes were recorded in the archipelago, with the strongest being a magnitude 4.6 on the Richter scale, striking the body of water between the islands of Santorini and Amorgos. Greek officials have urged the citizens to avoid large gatherings in enclosed spaces and stay away from certain ports of the island. Meanwhile, they've also asked to empty swimming pools of their water. The same measures are also taken for the neighboring small islands like Amorgos. Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis has appealed for calm after a wave of seismic tremors hit the tourist island.
manage a very intense geological phenomenon. I want to ask our islanders, first and foremost, to stay calm and to listen to the instructions of the civil protection. I've also asked the responsible ministry, within the next few days, to make a comprehensive presentation, a scientific presentation of the geological data, so that everyone knows what the phenomenon we have to manage is.
Well, according to Greek officials, the earthquakes were triggered by tectonic movements and not by any volcanic activity. However, experts have not ruled out the possibility of a stronger earthquake, as some of the islands are home to several fault lines in the Earth's crust. Over 23 million devotees plunged into the holy Sangam today. Over 340 million attended Maha Kumbh Mela so far. Today was one of the most auspicious days of the festival. Take a look at our next report as tens of thousands of devotees seek spiritual liberation through the sacred bath.
A surge of humanity, a tidal wave of devotion. The Maha Kumbh in Prayagraj is in full swing and the numbers are staggering. Millions of devotees took the sacred royal dip at the Sangam, marking the festival of Basant Panchami, led by ash-smeared ascetics and seers. Pilgrims from across India and beyond plunge into the holy waters, believing it cleanses them of sin and grants salvation. The air reverberates with chants, the beating of drums, and the spectacle of grand religious processions, elephants, horses, and chariots weaving through the massive crowds. Security is at its highest, but tragedy has already struck. A deadly stampede in the early hours of Wednesday claimed 30 lives and injured 60. With crowds swelling by the day, authorities are under immense pressure to manage the influx while ensuring the sanctity of this ancient ritual. The Maha Kumbh, held every 12 years, is the world's largest religious gathering. In 2019, the Ardh Kumbh saw 240 million pilgrims. This year, the number could soar to an unprecedented 400 million. That's more than the combined populations of the US and Canada. A sprawling 4,000-hectare township has been erected to accommodate the multitudes, turning Prayagraj into a city of faith. For many, this is more than a pilgrimage. It is a vow of spiritual renewal. Devotees renounce worldly pleasures, embrace celibacy, and dedicate themselves to prayer and meditation. As the Maha Kumbh continues, faith, devotion, and the challenge of managing history's largest human gathering remain at the heart of this extraordinary event. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Well, that's all that we have in today's edition of Gravitas. Thanks very much for staying with us. You are watching WION World is One. Do stay tuned.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada. Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
The better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us.
I say coordination, yes. Subordination, no.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in. You should start worrying about what effects the war in the DRC could have on your phone. Over the past year, the M23 has made rapid advances across the mineral-rich east of DR Congo, taking areas where coltan, the ore from which tantalum is extracted, is mined. Cotton is Benin's white gold, and now the West African nation is vying to become the continent's largest cotton producer. And henna artistry has been reorganized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage for 16 Arab countries, including Morocco. Watch World of Africa at these times on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Maha Kumbh. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Vielleicht nur